Hi, hello everybody. This is Letao, your astrologist and your spiritual counselor. Thank you so much for joining this quick video with me. Today, I have a very special guest I'd like to introduce to you guys, and probably many of you guys already know of him, Mr. Gahl Sasson. Hello, Gahl, how are you?
Very good. It's
Good to
great
have.
to be across the ocean. Yes. Yeah.
Well, we're always with you, as long as we have your book right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just for the audience who don't know much about Gao, Gao is a very renowned astrologist. You're based in Los Angeles, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And personally, I am a big fan of Gao, and every year. Gao would publish a book for that year's astrology, and I have been religiously reading his books since 2020, actually. So it's been 5 years,
Oh,
and all
wow.
his books are on my bookshelf, right? And whenever I need a little bit guidance about the transit and things, of course, I will have my own interpretation about what they mean. But the first resource I will go to is your book because I really want to know, your perspective on them and specifically, I love the part when you use a lot of the historical events, right, to interpret the cycles. And last time, for example, when Neptune was in Pisces, right, 180 years ago or whatever, and what kind of events happened at that time. And this tells me that not only you are an astrologer, but also you're a historian. And I really I like, and I think that more these days, right? If we can have more these kind of, astrology studies, right? We're combining history and human events with the planet transit. We will gain much more profound insights. Gal, could you please just quickly tell our audience about, what you do and, your background a little bit? Yeah.
Well, I studied psychology and I found it very interesting, but there was an element to it that was missing for me, especially because in psychology, as you know, you're not supposed to tell people what to do. And I'm an Aries that doesn't like to hear what to do, but I like telling people what to do. And it was a little bit tough with psychology because I just had the ability to say, how do you feel about it? Which is very important. I
Yeah.
send a lot of people to therapy. But I've realized that for me, I need a tool that I can tell people what to do when. Almost like I don't want to be just telling you that it's going to be raining. I want to recommend wearing a coat or even taking an umbrella, or maybe even not going to that place because there might be flooding.
Mm.
So that sent me on a search in a way, and then through synchronicities, which a lot of time happens if you decide that you want to learn something or get to some place. Usually the world responds back, the universe responds back. And I found myself studying astrology, tarot, and Kabbalah in Mexico. And then
Mm.
when I came to United States, I started teaching those similar classes and then doing charts for people. And 25 years later, here we are.
You are amazing, yeah, amazing. So would you call yourself more of a teacher rather than a therapist?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Mm.
that therapist, you have to be also legally, have clinical psychology masters or
Oh,
PhD.
oh,
And
mm,
I focused much more on mythology, on
mm,
symbolism, on Kabbalah and astrology,
mm.
rather than doing an MA or a PhD in
Yeah.
psychology.
You know
But I'm
what?
sure that just
Mm,
like you probably use quite a lot of tools
yeah,
that are in psychology.
yeah,
And because, before psychology, which started in Freud, all psychologists by default were astrologer or
that's
people
true.
that
Yeah,
read the runes or the I Ching
yeah.
or the tarot card. They use tools that are different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think sometimes when clients come to me right after the session, they want to know, how I studied these, esoteric studies and astrology. And they thought that I have been a counselor, a
Hmm.
therapist this whole time. And then I studied astrology. And I said, actually, it's the other way around. So initially, my first astrology teacher was actually a mythologist. It was a guy that I met when I lived in Australia. And the way he taught me astrology was all based on, the first thing that he would say, read Iliad and Odyssey and all those,
Hmm.
amazing stories, right? And he would say, okay, now you've read stories. So you tell me what you think Venus means. based on the behavior, the attitude of Aphrodite, right, in the book, rather than the traditional, you just memorize, right, what Venus means, what Mars means, and things
Ah,
like
that's
that.
why you have the map of Greece.
Correct.
Is it? Yeah.
This is my annual, holy, what do you call that? Trip, right? To my
Yeah,
adventure. Every year I try to, because from Hong Kong to Greece is such a long way. We don't even
of
have direct
course.
flight. And I know that every year you go to a Sophia. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe that's also the place where you hold very dearly in your
Hmm.
heart, right? Mm.
Also Istanbul, which was Constantinople
Huh, yeah.
before, you probably reincarnated in Greece many, many lifetimes.
I hope I did. I hope I did,
No, no,
because
you
yeah.
you don't live in Hong Kong and have a map of Greece randomly and ancient Greece if it's not familiar.
Correct. Yeah,
And
yeah. I really
that's
felt I
a
was
reminder.
home. Yeah, when I was
Hmm.
there, and I met actually a really good friend of mine. We just met randomly in Athens. I was kind of lost, and I just somehow I just struck up a conversation with him, and then we became best friends until now. Every year, we spend 5 days traveling the entire Greece, going to visit the ancient sites,
Hmm.
ruins. Oh my God, how many times I've been to Delphi? Like 6 times. It's just amazing. Yeah. So, yeah. So, oh, by the way, I want to just share your book with our audience. So, for any of my followers, you love astrology, you want to learn astrology, I believe Gahl's books are very, very good because they are very easy to understand. And it's not just talking about, the planets and, the transit, but also like what I mentioned earlier, Gahl would connect a lot of the historical events and the myth together in this book. So if this is something that you're interested in specifically, if you follow me, I believe that you like mythology, and this is the book that I would recommend. This is for 2025. Yeah, next year, I believe. Are you in the process of writing 2026?
I just started today.
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
And I believe that a lot of you guys who are using my Oracle deck, Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, the guy was very kind to provide the forward, right, endorsement on the back of the box. So if you have the box, you can see um, what Gal wrote for me, right? And I hope you guys are using this deck. Personally, this is just my thing, right? The Greek myth. And I think there are so many stories and there's so many things that we don't even talk about that are hidden in the
Hmm.
mythological stories, right? And they can always give us insight. All right, so the next thing that I think we can talk about this year, yeah, 2026, is specifically in the second half of this year. Gal, what do you think that are some of the important things that we should know?
Well, we had one first fourth, or let's say the first quarter of the year was about retrograding. Everybody was retrograding. Mars was retrograding. Venus was retrograding. Mercury
Yeah.
was retrograding. The eclipses were going on. It was a pretty tough time. It's almost as if it set us backward, almost as if it's taking us back to get to a point of reviewing things and not rushing into the year, because this is not a year of rushing. It's also, you know better than me, the Chinese New Year, the year of the snake. You're shedding.
Mm,
You're not racing. It's not like one of the animals that won the race.
yeah.
The snake is not interested in that. And the second quarter of the year and the third one is major planets that are considered to be social planets or global planets, meaning not personal planets like Venus and Mars and Mercury, that are changing sign. And because they're so slow, when they change a sign, it's a big, big deal. So we literally had Neptune just at the end of March move into Aries for the first time in 165 years. Neptune was in Pisces since 2012, very happy to be there. It's his home.
Mm,
And suddenly he's called to go to a war, in
mm,
a sense, or to go to visit fire.
mm,
Neptune is an ocean, it's water. And now it's going to be for 12, 13 years in Aries, which is fire. It's a clash of water and fire, feminine and masculine, doing and not doing. At the
mm,
same time, right at the end of this month, we're going to have Saturn moving from Pisces to Aries also. And they're
mm,
walking hand in hand, the planet of mysticism, Neptune, and the planet of practicality and doubt and skepticism, which is Saturn. So it's kind of an interesting combination. And then we have in July Uranus, the planet of the god of the sky, moving from Taurus, where he was grounded and didn't feel very good, to Gemini, which is going to be very happy because Gemini is, of course, a mutable air sign. So at least the god of the sky is back to his domain. And that happens every 84 years. Last time it was the end of World War II. So we're definitely dealing with many planets that are making a little entrance in 2025, giving us the taste, then retreating backward to their signs before. And then in 2026, they're going to settle there, Uranus for 7 years, Saturn for 3 years, and then Neptune for 12 years. So we are in a pivotal summer, if you're hearing this above the equator, or a pivotal winter of a lot of changes, a lot of madness, a lot of craziness, a lot of unpredictability. And that's why people should just talk slow, walk slow, breathe slower, just to
Mm.
make sure that they are giving time for
Mm.
these major adjustments.
Absolutely. I realize that in the first half of the year, right, a lot of the things are delayed. And
Hmm.
more than half of my consultations is about clients having certain expectations about things should be happening now, but what did I do wrong? And specifically, I would say in March, March, when both
Yeah.
right, Mercury and Venus are in retrograde, everything was just, chaotic during that. And I also had a little bit difficult time when that happened. I remember I was actually trying to get a book deal basically, yeah, with a publisher, and it just kind of back and forth. It was just, and then when finally the two planets are moving forward, done. And so
Yeah.
you cannot ignore it, right? It works like that. Mm,
Yeah, and you see it in the world stage. You see, yes, tariff, no tariff, this tariff, no tariff. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not kidding.
mm,
You know, be expelled. No, no, it's a wrong person being expelled. All of these things, you just see that it affects everybody. And before you said, I'm hardly a historian. I love history.
yeah.
If that makes me a historian, then definitely. But I don't think you can be an astrologer without being a historical,
He's right. Yeah.
interested in history. And also, I think that maybe some astrologers are kind of avoiding it or looking only at the history of themselves when I had last time this or that. But when you talk about planets like what we have right now, for example, when was Neptune and Saturn together in Aries? Well, last time was 1708, and
Mm,
before that, 1350, 60s.
mm,
It's every 400 or 500 years or so. So that's very significant to know, for example, for some people here in the States, that every time Uranus was in um, Gemini, there was a war
mm,
in United
mm,
States, the
mm,
War of Independence, Second World War, the war of the Civil War. So they need to know that. They need to know that not because, oh, that's going to happen. Maybe it will happen, but maybe there are conditions for that happening, and you knowing that there is that possibility can
mm.
offset or can prepare you, or at least prepare the country for some big change. Sometimes it's inevitable,
Yeah.
but sometimes this pre knowledge can really help us deal
Mm.
with things.
Yeah, yeah. I specifically feel the Chinese astrology part um resonate with a lot with the Neptune entering Aries, right? Because I remember in your book you talked about, for example, the Neptune in its worst case is about illusion. It's about
Mhm.
dreamy thoughts, right? And addictions and things like that, and confusion. And Aries is war, of course, right? It's the aggression, and so there could be things related to conflict and wars, but it's not because we are clear about that. It's because we're maybe through some kind of crazy imagination and bring these kind of things into reality. What is actually interesting for this year, 2025, in I Ching, is that this year we all know is the year of snake. And in your book, right, you talked about the wood snake this year. And actually, I don't know if our audience know yet. Each zodiac sign in I Ching actually carries their own elements anyway. So it doesn't really matter what the heavenly stem is, right? So for example, this year, the wood snake, the wood is a heavenly stem element. But any type of, every snake here, it doesn't matter, is metal snake, wood snake, snake is always fire. There is the
Mhm.
fire element hidden in the snake here. So what we have got, the heavenly stem and the earthly branch is the wood plus fire. And then what is interesting about this is wood, according to the five elements in I Ching studies, wood generates fire. So even though on the heavenly stem we have the wood element, but it strengthens the fire in snake, right? And so when we have a lot of fire, what I realize that when I'm reading a Chinese chart for someone, too much fire usually represents moodiness.
Hmm.
Too much, how do I describe? Either it's frustration or unresolved feelings in us. Yeah, and it's very different from Western astrology because Western astrology feelings to deal with water and emotion, right? But in I Ching, fire is the it's not really about emotion, but it has a lot to do with how we feel, especially our sacral chakra, that part about things. And so this year, what I also noticed that specifically for people who already carry a lot of fire energy in them under each chart, and plus this year we're adding more fire into it, they tend to lose a little bit of balance and they
Hmm.
tend to do what we call that. Well, in I Ching study, we call that self-harm, right? Or it's a little bit like you already generates a lot of fire. Now I'm throwing matches into you, and then
And
you're
an
like,
interesting thing,
yeah,
again, Neptune in astrology is self-destructiveness,
mm,
and it is now moving
yeah,
into Aries, which is I
mm,
am. So I agree that there is a lot of that danger of self-destructiveness. Maybe you can even interpret it that there is a connection between emotions and fire because emotions can make us lose our temper.
yeah, yeah,
It can bring anger out,
mm,
or anger towards in,
towards
which
itself,
is
yeah,
sadness, which
yeah,
is depression, which
uh-huh,
is emotional pain. So even in Kabbalah or in Hebrew, the
mm.
word for being angry and the word for sadness is the same root, which is
Oh,
also
okay,
interesting because it's the same root for the word design,
mm,
which is
mm,
again very, very interesting. So
mm,
it's almost as if you use that anger or
uh,
that sadness in order to design, and you can design basically what you want. Latsev, sadness is called etzev, anger, atzabim, and it's also
uh.
the word for the nervous system. So
Oh,
it's
okay,
all very much connected, but the idea is, the concept is that there is this fire, you can call it, which
yeah,
is emotional.
yeah,
Either it's
yeah,
directed outward and
uh,
I'm firing you
mm,
because you're a terrible worker,
mm,
or I'm going inward and then I feel like I want to be on fire, that I'm burning myself, that I'm destroying myself. And then, of course, the danger is to take action and end your life or end your relationship
yeah.
or end people that can really help you. So that definitely self-destructiveness is something we have to look into in the second part of this year, but definitely in the next 12 years.
Oh,
And it's not only
100%.
people,
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening in the United States. Everybody is saying that basically this government is causing self-destructiveness, that
Mm,
they're destroying everything.
yeah.
And where is it coming from? It doesn't come from enemies. It comes from misinformation, disinformation,
Yeah. Yeah.
politics. That's very similar. And that's the danger now, that a lot of governments, companies,
Uh,
people, pets, whatever, are going to start getting into self-destructiveness.
it's so interesting that you just talked about, right? The government, right? The trade war. You know, in I Ching studies, the element that rules international trade is water. The water
Hmm.
element has everything to do with the trading. Also, it's to do with medical science and things like that, right? And because this year, right, we're having wood generates fire, and also next year we're having the fire horse. Fire, the heavenly stem is already fire. Horse also carries fire energy, so it's double fire next year. And so there's no water at all. So you can see, right, how the trade industry, right, shipping, right, all these kind of things are being affected because there's not enough water elements supporting the balance there. It's
Yeah, of
fascinating.
course.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
mean, think also about it where
Mm.
where China developed its understanding
Uh,
of the universe. The only trade possible was probably through water,
water. Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
ports, mountains, crazy mountains to one side,
Uh,
crazy desert to the other side. We ain't gonna
uh,
go there. We should go through the water. And of course, we're 71% water on this planet. So it's
mm.
definitely talking about water touching almost every place. The
Yeah.
thing is that because of the fire, the water level is rising. So
Mm.
again, we might get to the point that this year, next year, there's going to be a lot of conflicts, a lot of, like you said, wars, especially
mm,
next year.
mm.
And then maybe after that, we're going to have to deal with much more emotional energy coming out or much
Oh,
more pain
yeah,
that
yeah,
needs to
yeah.
be healed. But yeah, 2026 is also going to be an intense year.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. I already feel it. I actually, based on my own I Ching chart, I'm not a big fan of fire energy actually. In I
Hmm.
Ching, yeah, because my preferred element is metal and water, and so this year, next year, so much fire, it's gonna affect my mood so much. I'm
Yeah.
doing meditation every day these days just to balance myself. One quick question, yeah, because Donald Trump is he's a Gemini. And
Hmm.
his sun sign is actually because he was born end of May, so his sun sign was around I think maybe 5 or 6 degrees, right, in Gemini. Well, it's not going to be far away from the Uranus transit, so
Of course.
right, it's just not for him, but for most of our Gemini people, right, when they have this Uranus transit in their mo one of the most important personal planet, what can they expect through this transit?
You know, we always say that he's unpredictable. And now we have a planet, Uranus, which is the awakener and
Yeah.
also unpredictable, moving on top of the sun, which represents issues with father. And we know that he had a lot of issue with father figures.
Mm.
Um, this could be unpredictable, disrupting energy.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if it's good or bad. I mean, depends who
Mm,
you're asking.
yeah.
And the other thing is, look at what was going on with Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini from June of last year to June this year is in exile. And
Yeah.
Jupiter in exile can't help anybody because he's in exile. He's far
Mm,
away from home. The only one that he can help is Gemini because he's basically a hostage there,
mm,
because
mm,
he's stuck there for a whole year.
mm,
And that's why I always told people that the only one that can benefit from Jupiter in Gemini are Gemini.
mm,
And
mm, mm,
lo and behold, he's coming back to office. And the
mm,
interesting thing is that he was born on the eclipse and a
mm,
lunar
mm.
eclipse.
Yeah.
So that makes that's the reason why there is that. It is not a typical Gemini,
Yeah,
but a
yeah,
caricature of a Gemini.
yeah. And also the transit Uranus would be opposing his natal moon
Moon.
anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be even more right unpredictable and just
Hmm.
rebellious and all that. Yeah. Oh, crazy time. We we also studied, a lot of the famous figures, right, internationally in their I Ching chart. And usually these people, you can see why they're rich, how they, money just come to them effortlessly. But you can also tell like how crazy they are because they're usually some kind of very imbalanced element on their chart. Like for example, in the I Ching, one of the element of metal rules integrity. So there's always a keyword attached to each element. Water is to deal with intelligence, information. It's very different from Western astrology. Yeah.
Hmm.
At the metal rules loyalty, soil rules integrity and things like that. And you realize actually certain politicians chart they have little metal there, so there's a lack of
Hmm.
integrity. They say one thing, the next
Yeah.
day they change. They say
It's not
I
only
didn't say
that when
that. I don't remember I said that.
when you're so much into getting power or money,
Uh,
then you have to compromise some
yeah.
of your inner truth, the
Mm,
fact that we're all one
mm,
and it doesn't make sense for one person to have so much and
mm,
other people have not.
mm,
Then you surround yourself with people who think the same way, so
mm,
it
mm,
can support your cognitive dissonance,
mm,
and
mm,
that's maybe the tribe of the metalless people.
mm, mm, mm.
So that could be part of it.
Do you think people who are truly in love with power can love someone, can really true like show their true love to love a person if they're in love with
If that
power so
person loves
much?
them, if that person loves them.
Uh,
So
uh,
basically, it's a feedback loop. I
oh, I
don't
see.
think they're able to love somebody who doesn't love them because that demands unconditional love. That's
Mm,
not
mm,
their territory. But I've noticed, especially you see with narcissistic people,
yeah.
that a lot of the politicians are narcissistic by
Mm,
default.
mm,
They love people that love them.
mm,
That's it.
mm. But that's
And if they,
conditional, right? That's purely
yeah,
conditional, right? Yeah, yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I was watching a documentary about the Empress Dowager, the
Hmm.
last empress in China, and it was kind of like sad because her whole life, right, Cixi, her whole life was about power, and she was so much in love with power that she was never able to love the two sons she had, and it was very conditional. And even when she actually killed the other son by herself because she knew that if she dies first, her son would change the policies and change everything she established in China. So she thinks, okay, I need to kill you first, and I will die. Then everything I have established will remain the same. Of course, nothing remained the same. But it was kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, I don't know why people they start, have to start believing in reincarnation because they'll get a better perspective that power
Uh,
is not everything. And even
uh,
if you're
uh,
very powerful in this lifetime, next lifetime you're gonna have to maybe pay for it.
uh, uh.
And there's no re need to be nasty, basically, really.
Yeah, yeah. Do you do you think we will get to have a say in how we're going to reincarnate in our next life?
Not we, but our
Yeah.
soul.
Or so,
We
okay.
is, us.
Uh, uh,
No,
uh,
we are not going to be, but I think that when you die, I
mm,
would say that when you connect to that sense of oneness as much as you can, because you still have a soul, you
mm,
sit down and you decide, do you want to be a woman or a man? Do you
mm,
want to be
mm,
born in China or in ancient Greece?
mm,
Do you want to be born with this genetic material that can make me give you cancer, but then you're
mm,
going to overcome it and become a doctor? Or do you
mm,
want to be a sport person,
mm,
dealing
mm,
with competition? I think you decide your chart. I think
mm,
you
mm,
decide your sex, your gender, your parents. It has to be coordinated but it's not that much coordination because everything is part of the one. It's almost like I don't
mm,
have to coordinate to raise my hand. My hand just rose up, but
mm,
I'm sure
mm.
that there's so many neurons in the brain and so much things that happen to make it happen. But
Yeah,
I think that's how it works.
interesting. Sometimes when I'm going through a lot of difficulties, right? And I sit there and I'm thinking, oh God, if I reincarnate into my next life, I'll definitely make sure that I don't have to go through this. What did I
Yeah,
do to deserve this? Yeah.
I always do an exercise in my past lifetime classes, and I
Uh,
tell people, let's construct your next lifetime.
mm,
Just sit down and even decide, ultimately, you want to be
yeah,
a
yeah.
man? You want to be
Mm,
a woman? Do you want to be born here, born there? And make a whole list of I would love to be a musician. No, no, no. I would love to be a boxer. Okay.
mm,
Whatever it is. And
mm,
then after you're done with all that, I ask people, so why don't you just do it now? Why
mm,
don't, if you said you wanted to be a woman, why don't you connect now more to your feminine energy? You said you wanted to be boxer. Why don't you just take martial arts classes? Ah, you said you wanted to be born in China. Why don't you go live in China for a while?
mm, mm,
And then it
mm,
kind of
mm.
like makes people go like, wait, you're right. But it is a kind of a projection test of what
Uh,
is missing to you. What do you
uh,
want to invest in?
uh,
And sometimes instead of asking a person, so what do you want to do when you grow up? It's
uh,
easier to give them that distance of what you want to do next lifetime
mm,
and then
mm,
tell them, then do it now.
Interesting. I think that's probably exactly the reason why I go to Greece.
Hmm.
Sometimes I wonder what would be like it feels like if I were living in ancient Greece. And I realized that actually when I was in Greece, I really enjoyed just being surrounded in the ancient sites and the ruins, right? But if you really put me in the hustle and bustle of the center of chaotic Athens, I feel nothing. And I feel like, but yeah, but this is just like Hong Kong, you know what I mean? Like the cars are beeping each other and people are yelling, things
Yeah,
like
but it
that.
also
Yeah.
could be familiar. Maybe you've
True.
already
Yeah.
have been.
True.
A
Yeah.
lot of time that's what happens to us, that we
Yeah.
are gravitating, like attracts like.
Yeah.
So if you're a person who is eating well, most
Mm,
likely you're going to go to restaurants
yeah.
that are healthy and meet
Mm,
people that are healthy,
mm,
and therefore you're surrounded with that, while
mm, mm,
other
mm.
people might be different. So what you basically gravitate towards places that are familiar. And I always
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
if there is a place you really hate, I
Mm,
can't stand it. Okay, you've been there before.
mm,
Because you
mm,
don't hate. I don't hate a book I haven't read. I can't tell
mm,
you I
mm,
hate this book. It's stupid. You didn't read it. Oh, I read that book. A part of it. Okay, I don't like that book. So the
mm,
same thing with locations.
mm.
It's definitely part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that when I was reading your books and watching your listening to your podcast, that I was like, wow, I really liked this. Is that you talked about how to really be that a certain zodiac sign embraces energy. I remember you said very clearly in one of your episodes, you said to be a true Aries, you also need to learn how to be a Libra.
Hmm.
And right to find that balance, right? So almost like a mirror effect, and that resonates
Precisely.
with me a lot. When I was doing the I Ching studies, it's all about finding the balance right in there. It's not about, oh, I'm an Aries and everything is about Aries and then I'm a true Aries. So
Totally.
so my question for you is, of course, you never really, said it very clearly on your in your podcast, but somehow, as an astrologer, we all figured out your chart. You have so many planets in Aries, right? So do you feel that sometimes when you are dealing with the Libra energy, you get inspired by them, or you need that
Yeah.
those people's energy?
Because I think that maybe I assimilated that into astrology because I haven't heard about it before.
Uh,
Maybe from the yin yang, the idea of the yin yang, the symbol of the yin yang that really, I think it's my favorite symbol on the planet. I think it's a
mm,
brilliant symbol. It can be
mm,
written books about the yin yang symbol.
mm,
Um, the concept that there is no black without white, there is no white without black.
mm,
And the same thing with people. People think, oh, I have 6 planets in Aries. I'm a super Aries. Yeah, you have a lot of planets in Aries, but imagine pouring that Aries into a cup. If it's so full, it's going to start leaking on the opposite side
mm,
and being
mm,
absorbed by Libra. So
mm.
a person, and that's true also in Kabbalah, there is an idea that the world is like a sphere,
Yeah.
and if you are two people that are very extreme against each other, and you think that you're getting more extreme in your attitudes, more and more and more and more, and you're thinking that you're going away from each other, but as more as extreme as you are, actually, because the world is a circle, you're going to eventually meet again. That's why,
Uh-huh.
extreme right, extreme left are the same. You
Interesting.
see it here in the United States. Suddenly, the far left and the far right agree on one thing, that anti-Semitism and the Jews are to blame for everything. You know what I mean? The
Uh-huh.
rest they can argue. That's happening all over the world. Whenever
Yeah,
you are
yeah.
extreme, you eventually meet. So the same thing is going on with astrology. You can't be red without the green of Libra. You
Mm,
can't be a leader, Aries, without a follower, Libra. You can't be um, about war if there is no periods of peace, because
yeah,
otherwise, what is the declaration of war?
yeah.
Well, if there is a time of peace, we're declaring now war. So Aries in Libra, Taurus and Scorpio, Gemini and Sagittarius, Cancer and Capricorn, Leo and Aquarius, Virgo and Pisces, they have a special connection. They
Mm, mm,
fulfill
mm,
each other. Why? Because they're opposite. And if they come together in balance, they come to
mm.
that immovable point, what is
Yeah,
called in alchemy axis mundi, the
yeah.
center of the world, the center of the universe, the place where the Buddha sat down to attain enlightenment, basically the origin of the Big Bang. And
Mm,
in
mm,
order
mm.
to get to that center, to be centered, doesn't matter what your sign is, that's where you have to focus. Or let's say, if you know that next year, I don't know, there's going to be a lot of activity, let's say in Aries, okay, then we have to assimilate Libra.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're going to blow each other up
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Libra is
yeah,
peace.
yeah.
Or if it's too much Libra, well, we need some Aries because nobody's going to make a decision now. So we need somebody to get up and
Yeah,
start and doing something.
yeah. I find this opposition energy fascinating in someone's chart, right? Specifically, the North Node and the South Node are always opposing each other, right?
Of course.
Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, whatever. And I notice usually, based on my experience with clients, if one of the ruler, right, one of the rulers of either is a north node ruler or the south node ruler, if that planet is forming a trine or a sextile with the other north node or
Ruler.
south node, usually it's easier for them to finish this transition and realize. So, for
Hmm.
example, let's say Aries, north node in Aries and south node in Libra, and if their natal Venus is sextiling or trining their north node, it's almost like it's easy for them to use their past life knowledge and transform that into the current lesson that they need to learn. And I find that in a lot of people's chart very, very interesting. I think that has a lot to do with, even though they're opposite, but there's always a
Hmm.
channel, right, for them to come together. Uh,
Yeah, because opposites are basically the same but opposite. Opposition is basically two things that are the same but opposite. It always sounds like a paradox, but it's true. I mean, it's the same thing that when you look at the mirror, you're the same, but you're reversed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
something we always have to remember. That's the trick to come back to oneness. The two breaks the one into two,
Yeah, yeah,
masculine,
yeah.
feminine,
Yeah,
left, right.
yeah.
But you always have to remember there are two sides of the oneness, and the oneness doesn't have any sides.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gal, for sharing your wisdom with us today.
No, thank you for contacting me. What time is it there?
It's 8:35 a.m. I think
Ah,
we're
okay.
yeah,
Here it's 5:30.
we're 16 or 15 hours apart.
15,
Yeah,
16.
yeah, yeah. Because because my publisher is in the Portland, so they are in the same time zone with
Ah,
you. Like,
yeah.
yeah. So again, just to show tell our audience, if you like astrology, mythology, and you want to study more, personally, I don't recommend a lot of astrologers, but Gahl is one of the teachers I highly respect in this community.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely read his books. I mean, I personally get very inspired. I learned so much from Gahl's book. And also, Gahl, I will also share your website because I think you have all your workshop, right? The schedule, everything on your website or somewhere. Yeah. A lot of those workshops are actually online. And so you guys can also, attend those workshops. And of course, if you're in, for example, wherever, because Gahl travels extensively, you happen to be in Gahl's city. Where are you traveling next? London or where? Where are you going to go?
No, Gwangju is the first one in May.
Oh.
From Gwangju to Sofia, Istanbul, then to Zurich, London, Tel Aviv,
Okay.
and
Okay.
back to
Yeah.
Zurich.
Yeah, well, hopefully one day you will organize an event or something in Hong Kong. Yeah,
In
and I
Hong
would-
Kong, yeah,
yeah,
for
I
sure
would,
next year.
and I would love to be a part of that.
Yeah,
And I'm sure a lot
definitely.
of our audience would like to come. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gahl, yeah, and wish
Thank
you
you.
a fantastic second half of 2025. And let's connect again soon.
Thank you.